So sometimes I'll get Missy real mixed up, depending on how I say it. Because sometimes what you say into that phone ain't what comes out of that phone. You have to really look at it afterwards and say, is that the right word? You know. Brother Eddie, he calls me every Sunday morning at 5 o'clock. We pray for one another in our churches. And I'm always leery after I say it. I sit there in my blurry eyes because Eddie gets up a whole lot earlier than Brother Jeff does. And I'm looking at it, I'm trying to get my eyes unblurred to make sure I'm saying the right thing to Brother Eddie, before I send it off, to him. So, press down. We're going to be at Luke chapter 6, verse 38. What's happening within this area here is Jesus has given us rules of kingdom life. In other words, he's saying to us, hey, there is overall rules that manage living as a Christian, having kingdom life. God did have, if you would, God had in plan what he wanted for kingdom life, to live in the kingdom of God. And so this is kind of at the very end of that, and he's talking about a certain thing which we're going to get into this morning, because I think sometimes we miss the mark on this particular thing. And I think in today's society we're missing it more and more than we ever did before because of the way society is today. So there's certain things going on within verse 38. So let's read verse 38 and then we'll get started. Give, and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down. That's what he's saying. If you are in the habit of giving first, before you do anything else, if you're in the habit of servanthood, okay, if you're in the habit of doing for God first, all right, then he says these things will be true. It shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down and shaken together and running over. Shall men give unto your bosom? For with the same measure that ye meet withal, it shall be measured to you again. Let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, we thank you so much, dear God, for your grace and your mercy and your understanding with us, Father. And if we misapply, Father, the mark that you're setting for us, the bar that you set for us in our life, if we're misapplying that in any way, convict us of it, Father. We'd rather be doing things the way you would want us to do them, Father, in the way that would be pleasing unto you, and which your glory would not just be shown, Father, that your glory would flow out of us and others could see right readily in our lives. I thank you, dear God, for your love and your mercy toward us. Look upon our hearts, have the Spirit be upon our hearts, and we ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen. I really didn't understand too much about that scripture, to be honest with you, until when I got to building bigger homes later on in life. What I found out in building huge homes are built so much different than we build homes. We're building homes out of lumber, this and that. But homes that are built out of concrete and have floors upon floors of concrete, and understanding that the load limits have to be a certain way within each one. Like, for instance, the top floor don't need to be at a high PSI rate and it's concrete, compared to the second floor needs to be higher, and then the bottom floor really needs to be higher. I didn't know all those things. I had to learn those things on the fly as I learned building. But what happened was, one of the very first concrete huge buildings that I built, was the bottom floor. We had these huge vibrating machines that would take the concrete after it's poured in the floor, and we would vibrate every inch of that concrete so that it would just pack in to just like unbelievable strengths. Like, for instance, you can take concrete, pour it in a bucket, and it'll have like a pretty high PSI rating, maybe 1,500. But you take that same bucket and you vibrate that, beat that can, or you vibrate the inside of it where every bit of it settles down to the bottom, and then you pour more concrete on it, even to the point that it's running over, it could have 4,000, 5,000 strength. I learned when you press down something, when you shake it and you shake it up, when you press it down and pour more on top of it and continue on till it overflows, you can have much stronger, much stronger. So what is God saying to us? Do y'all think that God knows how to build a house? I think God knows how to build a house. And I think God also knew if you did certain things to certain things, it was going to make it much stronger. And what he's saying to us is this. At the very end of the rules of the kingdom, he says, I'm telling you, you need to shake that really well. You need to vibrate it. You need to pack it down. You need to pour more on top of it and continue that process till it's running over. Okay, that's what he's saying. That's what he's saying here. I guarantee you we've all done this before. I was once hungry, and I mean I was, the kind of hungry where you want something to eat, but it just don't seem to be where it's supposed to be at, where then you keep opening every door of your cabinets and your refrigerator. Well, anyway, Robin caught me opening the refrigerator door like 16, 17 times. And I mean, I'd sit down for a while and I'd go back to the refrigerator. I'd open that refrigerator. I'd pull that door open. I'd look at everything inside of it and I wasn't doing nothing for me. And I'd close that door and go sit down for a while. We've all done that when we're hungry. When we're really needing something to eat, we just don't know what we need to eat. I remember she says, "What are you doing?" I said, I said, people are saying we're in a depression right now, honey. And I'm beginning to believe it because our refrigerator's in depression. And she said to me, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I keep looking in this refrigerator thinking I'm going to find me something in there that I'll eventually settle on and I can eat. But for the life of me, I've come back and I've looked in this refrigerator time and time and time again." There was things in that refrigerator to eat. Don't get me wrong. There was some leftover sauerkraut and weenies. There was things like, the things that get left in your refrigerator for like weeks before you ever throw it out just because you ain't eating that after you ate it the first time. There was a half-eaten can of Viennese sausages I remember in there, and I thought, boy, I probably would have ate that if it was brand new after the lid was first popped on it. But I'm not eating that either. Some leftover veg all that Robin had made some soup out of. I come close on the soup. I like soups every now and then, but I couldn't settle on it. There was some leftover molasses in there that I'd used, well, not molasses, it was actually syrup that somehow my refrigerator miraculously turned into molasses and pure sugar after a period of time. But nothing of substance that I could speak of. Really nothing in there that I could make a meal out of and somehow feel the needs that I had in my heart for eating. You ever do that? Like magically, if you complain enough, or magically if you open that door enough, that somehow that's going to highlight the problem enough to fix what you're trying to do. And yet every time you open it up, it's just the same. And you ain't got it. That's what God's talking about in your spiritual life. He said, don't go to that door magically thinking things going to appear. There's a work involved in spirituality. There's a work involved in knowing Christ. There's a work in knowing Christ. And it's a kind of work that you got to shake up. You got to be shaken up sometimes with it. You got to sometimes get all the impurities out of it so that the purities get more pressed down. Why is it that we open that refrigerator door? and see that there's nothing good there, yet we will open it again and again and again, 7 or 8 times, hoping things have changed, or hoping that somehow, that miraculously we're going to open that door. Are we eternal optimists? We all do that. I think we all do. I've seen everybody do that. Where you open the cabinet door and you're looking for something to eat, and then there'd be tons of food there, but nothing you want. Are we eternal optimists, or are we unable to accept what is? There's 2 phrases which are often used in the Bible to highlight this very point. Okay, and by that I mean, I want you to understand, there is 2 phrases, biblical phrases, that God uses in the Bible to kind of highlight this very fact of our lives. Okay, you don't have to go there, but in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 27, it says these words. Now, the proverbist is writing to us things we should know about our spiritual lives that we can apply to our spiritual lives. And in Proverbs 11, verse 27, it says these words. He that diligently seeketh good procureth favor. He that is diligent in seeking good procureth favor. Okay? And then the opposite of that is, and he that seeketh mischief, it shall come unto him. If you're seeking good, it's going to be good. If you're seeking bad, it's going to get to you. The bad is going to be getting to you. Okay? So that's kind of what the Proverbs is writing. You ever did that? It's not just food, by the way. How many times have we had that one sock that come out of the dryer that don't have its match to it? And the immediate thing we start doing is we go looking for its other match. We go searching everywhere, maybe where I took it off at. Maybe did it get lost? Is it in the lint deal? We search everywhere for those. I guarantee if you go to my house right now, on the fireplace, one side is Ella's half socks and the other side is my half socks. I don't throw them in the hamper no more. If it don't have its other half, I throw it on either side of the chimney over there. And the next time I do clothes, if it just happens to show up, I'll know where to look to go get its other better half. The problem with that is, and I didn't know this at the time, the girls of today like wearing 2 separate different socks. They like wearing one on one side, one on the other. I didn't know that. Well, anyway, Ella says, why are you throwing my socks on the chimney? I said, well, it don't have a match. Yes, it does. This matches with that. And I'm like, that does not match with that. She says, that's the point. Have you ever gone to do that, searching for something, you search for it, you can't find it. When you can't find it, you say, I'm going to give up on it, I'm just going to give up. And the minute you give up on it, that's when you find it. Well, it could have been right there, right before you the whole time. You never even thought about it. Never even thought about it being different. Never thought about it being not with that. It's just the way we search, right? The way we search means something, right? Because if you search in one way, but then them socks ain't supposed to match in the first place, that's a different story, right? I stole one of her socks up on that deal. She says, I began to wonder where all my socks were going to, because you're just throwing them up on the chimney up here. The other day I had a drill. I thought I had a drill. I went looking for my drill the other day, and I searched all over the place. I knew it had a black case, and I searched all over my house. I could not find my drill. I called Amy. Amy's always using my stuff. I called Amy. Amy, did I let you borrow my black case drill set. She says, no, I don't think so. You can go over there and look if you want to, but I don't think it's over there. Went over there, wasn't over there. I came back, continued to look further. Couldn't find it, couldn't find it, couldn't find it. I finally found it. Why? Because the case wasn't black at all. It was red. And I just happened to open it up, and I went, that's where that thing goes. It's a black drill that goes in a red case. This searching thing, folks, God put it at the end. So I'm thinking that God says about this particular spiritual point, this is pretty important, because what he's doing here, he's making whatever we have spiritually more stronger spiritually. Okay? But if we search wrong for the wrong thing, if we're searching wrong, that ain't going to help you none. Okay? That's not going to help you in one way or another, anything you're doing. There's a reason for this in a biblical sense, and it's called what we call, in a good sense, a good eye. It has a name for it in Hebrew. It's ayin kotova. Ayin kotova in Hebrew. That's basically what it means. It means to have a good eye. Okay, that's an eye that is well discerning, important, able to distinguish from other things. Okay, that means good eye in Hebrew. Okay, it's talked about this good eye here in verse 38 when God's trying to tell us about what it means to be a Christian and to live as a Christian. What Jesus was talking about in Luke and the Proverbs here is that when it comes to spiritual health, we need to be one who seeks good. We need to be a seeker of good. That's what the Proverbs said, right? Seeker of good, good things will happen. Seeker of bad, or searcher of bad, bad things are going to happen. Okay? So he says, you got to be a good seeker. All right? Not only have a good eye, you got to be a good seeker. You got to be a seeker of good. Okay? Which is shaker tov in Hebrew. All right? And not a searcher of bad. What's the problem between seeker and searcher in our English today? They're the same, right? Right? Seeker or searcher, to me, could be either one. You could be seeking and searching, and you could be seeking or searching in the bad. Okay, the English language kind of goofed it up there a little bit for us, didn't it? Because we equate the two as being the same, a seeker or a searcher. All right? Therefore, we say, well, why didn't they just tell me be a searcher for good and don't be a searcher for bad, right? Because it would mean basically the same thing. But the problem is in Hebrew, those are not the same words. And they don't mean nothing of the same. Ain't that odd? We have a place in the Bible where actually the English word don't do justice to the actual Hebrew word. The seeker and searcher words in Hebrew are more, it's more to them. It's more to them than we see. They're not the same in Hebrew. In fact, if you were telling somebody to do one or the other, it depending on which one you're talking about, they would be totally different than what you're thinking about. Well, how are we supposed to have a good eye toward something if we or get confused about being a seeker or a searcher, right? How are we supposed to have a good eye toward those things as far as living in Christ? When either one of them could be the same, right? Because it's saying seeker, searcher. When we hear it in English, it's so much the same. But this is how the real principle works in verse 38 in our everyday lives. And it's this. When you seek the good of others, you will find God's favor upon you. Okay? when you seek the good of others, in a habit of seeking the good of others, God's favor is going to be pressed down on you. He's going to be pressing down on you. He's going to be making you stronger. He's going to make you more disciplined. All right? But when you search for evil in others, the very evil you find becomes your own. Now, there is a difference there, isn't it? Because depending on whether you're seeking good out of somebody, to know something good out of somebody, or whether you're just assuming the bad of somebody, okay, that's a big difference, all right? There's a big difference here that God's trying to get across to us. So in every way, we can be a seeker or a searcher, and depending on which way you choose, you will find the life of either to be upon you. Depending on what we do with one or with the other, that life will be upon you, pressed down, more powerful. The two words we're going to focus on is this seeker-searcher thing, because in Hebrew, it's a lot deeper. The meanings are a lot deeper. For instance, because our English language doesn't distinguish between the two, right? Seeking and searching to me is the same thing. And searching and seeking is the same thing. I could be doing either one. Because this English language barrier we have, that we only read the Bible in English, like we should, I guess. But because we do that, we miss the point. Okay? We miss the point. You see, seeker comes from the Hebrew word shoker. Seeker is shoker in Hebrew, okay? And its basic meaning, seeker, in its basic meaning in Hebrew, is used in the same English word that we have for dawn, when the sun comes up. Okay? Seeker in Hebrew means the same as the dawn, the morning sun coming up from the day before. Okay? It's used as the dawn. Okay? It's used in English as the dawn. It's used as seeker, depending on how it's translated within the Bible. A lot of different things are happening with this word. Okay? It's a lot like an irrepressible seeking. For instance, it's like this. Every day ends in night, right? Every day ends in the night, right? Okay? Well, we sure hope the sun comes up tomorrow. Right? All right. We sure hope the sun comes up tomorrow. But we also know that with every night that comes, there's going to be a dawn of a new day. Right? We also know there's going to be a dawn, a new day. All right. All right. Let's take my refrigerator illustration, for instance, with this, okay, for a second. Instead of seeing, every time I open that refrigerator, instead of seeing an empty refrigerator, I was seeking, okay? I was seeking, depending on which way. It's kind of odd because I was seeking something totally good, but all I found was I searched for evil because I wasn't going to eat none of that was in the refrigerator, right? I was seeking, but what I got was different than what I was seeking, okay? It's almost like I was looking for something better. I was looking for something better instead of what there was. Right? All right. What's the problem with society today? Well, society's kind of turned that on its head. Instead of trying to seek the good that's in people, We usually just accept them the way they are and just say they just bad. They just bad. Listen, if you're going to seek the good in someone, you're going to have to work at it, right? Because what comes with familiarity? Most of the time, we get to knowing one another too good, and then we get to thinking, there's some things about them I do not like. That's like when you first get married, right, Ben? When you first got married, you wasn't looking for nothing bad in old Maisel as she was going out. But I guarantee you, after being married to her about 30, 40, 50 years, I bet he could tell us every bad habit she's got. and, so, and hers too. On the other hand, we have this word searcher. We're seekers. We're searchers also. They're different. Okay. On the other hand, we have this searcher term that comes from the Hebrew-based word that basically means assumption. Instead of looking for the good in people, we just assume they're going to be bad because they're a certain way. How many would do that? How many of us do that? Get to know somebody and say, we're going to assume they're heading in a bad way, or our assumption is they're going to turn out bad. I remember Ella always asked me about different people. Are they always going to be that way? I said, I have no earthly idea. I don't know what God's going to do with them in their lifetime. That's what I tell her. I said, the person you have today, God can get a hold of, and they can be a totally different person after he's finished with them. So whatever you see in that person today, you need to get that out of your mind. And you need to remember, not everybody stays the same all the time. All right? I tell her that. I warn her of that all the time. I said, because our habit is to assume. It's not to search out the good in others. Our habit is to assume people are going to be the same way, or assume people are this way, or assume that things are this way. Here's what it means to you and me, basically. Assuming the worst in anything or anyone actually takes little or no effort. That's just your assumption. As is what you're thinking. As is what it is. To assume, to search for the bad in people don't take long. Come here on any Wednesday night. Take care of the children for any 5 seconds, and I guarantee it won't take you long. Them kids can be so bad, but they can be so good too. You see, you can just assume that they're that way. You can assume these things because that's our nature to assume. It's not hard to assume, all right? I hung around you long enough. I don't need to hang around you no more. I'm going to just go on my assumption, and that's the way it's going to be. But seeking the good of others requires compassion. It requires willingness to hear the burdens of others. There's a whole lot of things going on with that searching. You have to have a more long-term idea about it. You have to have a more eternal sense about the idea of it. You can't assume. You have to know. If you assume and you're wrong, they're never going to trust you again. All right. But if you're right and you know you're right and you confront them, they'll love you to the end of your days because at least you was willing to confront them in regards to it is in their life. You can't assume nothing. Pretty much got to prove everything out. Pretty much got to have a lot of compassion. You pretty much it requires compassion and a willingness to look for the good in people instead of you ever did that, try doing that? Even taking the worst kid around you, or a person, and they're around you and they're doing their thing. And then the first thing out of your mind is, oh my goodness gracious, what I used to say all the time, Miss Darlene Gary. Miss Darlene Gary taught me in Calvin in Vacation Bible School in the summer times. And I remember Miss Darlene told me one time, she says, Jeff, I'll be honest with you, when you were little, you and Calvin were little, and Calvin's a deacon there now, I'm a pastor. She said, I'll be honest with you. Y'all showed up, when you Cooper boys showed up sometimes, I thought we're going to need about 2 or 3 more adults with that bunch right there. And she said, I was just assuming, I had no earthly idea that God was going to do anything. She told me that, and I always remembered that after that. Because listen, take any person that's acting bad, and you can assume anything you want because they're acting bad enough. We can just see that. But to search out the good that's in them, that's a really difficult process. That means you have to talk to them. That means you have to know them personally. You have to kind of find out what is good and what is bad in them, not to highlight the bad that's in them, but to highlight the good that's in them, so that maybe they can improve upon whatever they're doing with their lives. Back to our base question. Why do we open the door to the refrigerator time and time again, knowing nothing has changed? Or why do we tend to find ourselves in the worst instead of the good of what God has for us? That's a good point. Because I still to this day will open that refrigerator 4 or 5 times. There ain't nothing in there much. But I'll look at it. I'll look at it and say, man, I probably can boil an egg or make some scrambled eggs. That sounds pretty good. But I had scrambled eggs 2 days ago when I was looking in the refrigerator 4 or 5 times trying to find something else to eat. I'll tell you why it is. It's easier to be a searcher of evil and assuming the worst than it is to go out and to be a seeker of good and put things in the refrigerator where the outcome might turn out a little bit differently. See, it's a matter of what we're putting in the refrigerator. It's not a matter you're opening the door. It's a matter of what you're putting into the refrigerator. All right? Right? Like if I eat something nowadays, I've done got in the habit now. Ella don't eat leftovers, so the only person does is me. But if I don't like what I ate that night, it goes out to the buzzards. If it's something good I might eat tomorrow, I'll put it in the refrigerator. That way I don't have to clean out my refrigerator near as often. I know what you're thinking. Is this a sermon about a refrigerator sermon, or is this a spiritual point to this in some form or fashion that's relevant to anything that I might be doing in my life right now? How's this for a nugget for your spiritual life? When we choose to follow after Christ and really mean it in our hearts, where we're saying, man, Jesus, I just want to be as best I can in following after you. When you find Christ and you say, you know what, I'm just, and what God is saying to us about this very point is this. If you do that, if you're looking to live your life in trust with God and trusting God to always be there for you, then you'll be seeking of good in all others. You hear me? You will be a seeker of good in all others. If you want things to turn out well for you spiritually, then you need to be seeking the good that's in others. All right, that's what he's saying there, basically. He's saying if you're a seeker of the good that's in others, you'll find your life gets stronger, and you find spiritually you become stronger. You'll find spiritually you're doing a much better job of it than you did before. And you'll find something else. You will find revealed instances of God's glory, not in yourself, but in others. Where you're going like, wow, that kid really gets it. Or that person really gets it. The law of Messiah is this. When we bear the burdens of others, when we seek the good that's in others, okay, being a seeker of good, This is a law that's up from the Messiah. It's read, come out of his mouth. I'm assuming he meant what he said. When we seek the good, when we are seekers of good in others, you'll find your needs met first before anybody else's needs are met by God. That's what he said. If you do this, when you're a seeker of good of others, you'll find your needs met before any others because God's doing that for you. Yeah, go ahead.
I believe that, but sometimes I know this guy. I mean, I really liked, and I would have trusted him. I mean,
Right.
he spoke about God and all this. But come find out, he was a real big letdown, and I was really disappointed in him. Cause I mean, I was really upset and really just he fooled me,
Sure.
and I'm shocked.
You know what God said about that here? He says, you be a seeker of the good. You must have helped him. So you must have been sowing some good. You must have been seeking good for him, right? That's all we're supposed to do. Listen, folks, if you're a seeker of good in others, God will be your seeker. He'll be the one taking care of your needs, okay? If we're a seeker of bad in people first before we ever seek any good that's in them, then more than likely we're going to be part of that problem, all right? What he's saying is you be a seeker of good first. I'd like for you to say that, Robert. You were seeking good first. Are we going to be disappointed sometimes? Because why? Because not everybody seeks good. Sometimes people seek bad. Search bad. Shocked you, didn't it? Down to your very senses. Let's say you and your friend are in need of something spiritually. Did you know that both you and your friend both have a need spiritually? And it just so happens that that need is the same thing, okay? You have two choices in my view. You can look after yourself first, take care of your needs spiritually first, and then take care of your friend's needs second. But Jesus said, if you want pressed down, strong spiritual faith, you'll look after their needs first before you ever look after your needs first. That's what he says. You'll look after their needs first before you'd ever, because you're seeking good, right? You're seeking better for them. You're seeking for the better. I love people say people can't change because that's going to make me seek even harder for them. That's going to make me pray for them harder. That's going to make me say to myself, I'm going to do the best job I can personally to make sure they at least see someone doing good in their life for them than bad, right? Because that's what we ought to be doing. Here's what the law of Messiah teaches us. When we look after the burdens of others, our needs will be met by God. That's basically what he's saying. When you seek out the needs of others, your needs are going to be found to be fed. Okay, you're going to open the refrigerator, and it's going to be your favorite food inside the refrigerator the moment you open it up because you got a lot in that refrigerator. You've been putting a lot in that refrigerator. You've been putting good things into that refrigerator, not something you ain't going to eat. You've been putting things in there you will eat. All right? I did it the forced way. I just made sure I didn't put no bad in there. I just made sure whatever's in my refrigerator is good, so therefore when I open my refrigerator, at least I ought to be seeing something to eat. When Job prayed for, guess what happened with Job? Job had these friends that had him all wrong. I'll be honest with you. Job's friends really didn't know what was going on in Job's life. They were berating him, telling him, you must have ticked God off somehow, Job, because he is really mad at you. He done gave you bulls, killed your wife, killed your kids, whatever, got you poor now. I said, what did you do to make God mad, Job? They were that kind of friends. But guess what Job did in the end? Job prayed for his friends first before he ever got the first healing. Job prayed for his friends before he ever saw the first sign of God doing for him. But guess what happened the moment he started praying for his friends in the book of Job? The moment that Job began praying for his friends, God began to heal everything in Job's life. It's hard to see that. It's hard to see the good in others. It's hard to fight for the good of others. It's hard to, especially when they ain't acting right. It's hard to do that. We say this and we say that. But the truth of the matter is, it's only one way with God. I always tell people, I'm going to preach the Bible whether you don't like it or not because I said something from the Bible. You can take that up with God. But I'm just going to preach the Word. Because the Word is what we need to be doing. It's not necessarily what we're doing all the time. It's what we need to be doing. God allows us to share in the blessings of others when we bear the burdens of others. When we search for evil or the worst in others, we will soon find that very worst of what we perceive and dislike in others is exactly what seems to be relevant and true. I was watching something this morning about politicians, and the guy got up there and she was trying to make it a Republican point where he'd speak bad about the Democrats. She was trying to get him to say, Democrats are acting bad. He said, well, actually, both groups do it. That's what he said. He said, actually, both groups do it. So if it's bad, then both groups are doing it. I don't know how else to put it. That's the problem we have with society today, folks. There's nothing good or bad because we got it so confused. We don't know what is good and what is bad. Here's an idea. Always do good. Always seek good in others, and I guarantee there'll be good in your life. If you want to search out bad or how bad can be in others, you'll find that to be true in your life as well as it is in their life. You hear me? So what should we be as Christians? We should be seekers. That's what the Proverbs said. You should be seekers of good and not searchers of evil. Are we going to do it anyway? Yeah, probably so. It's hard not to. It's hard not to nowadays. I can't tell you how many young kids I've dealt with in my lifetime that had parents that really weren't the greatest of parents. And they were wanting to blame everything in their life that was wrong because their parents were wrong to them in their life. Instead of thinking how good they could possibly be if they just got better with the one God who loves them all and that can change their lives. Right? It's hard to be great seekers. We want to mix those roles up, but those roles are not mixed up. The Proverbs put them on the opposite ends for a reason. Jesus put them at the opposite ends for a reason. Even in Galatians, it talks about the difference between the two. There's a great gulf affixed between the one and the other. And depending on how you're living your life and how you're doing in your life, then something can be pressed down, made stronger, made better for you. So that when you get into those situations, you'll have something in the tank. You'll have something to help in those things. As Lanny and others come and began to open up a song to us of invitation, let's bow our heads.